everyone, and welcome to another episode of Page Turners Plus. As always, we thank you for watching our programs and for following us on Facebook and YouTube at Page Turners Plus. Today, we'll be reviewing Jacob Ross's Black Rain Falling, and to tell you a bit more about Mr. Ross and his novel, we have Francine.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Jacob Ross was born in Grenada and now lives in Britain. A Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, he's the author of two acclaimed collections of short stories, A Way to Catch the Dust and Song for Simone, and Tell No One About This, which was nominated by the 2018 Bocas Literary Festival as one of the three best works of Caribbean fiction published in 2017. His first novel, Pinto Bender, was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Writers' Regional Prize, and his debut crime novel, The Bone Readers, won the inaugural Jalak Prize. Today we're discussing Black Rain Falling, which is the second in the Kamaho Quartet, of which The Bone Readers is the first. In Black Rain Fallen, we pick up with CID detective Michael Digger Dixon and his fellow detective Miss Stanislaus, who's been accused of murder. Digger has 6 weeks to prove that she acted in self defense, and in the meantime, they're also fighting a drug ring run on Kamaho Island. So let's talk about this great literary crime novel.
Thank you very much, Francine. And I think we could start this discussion by talking about the protagonist. So, do you agree that Jacob Ross spends almost as much time showing the state of mind of the protagonist as he does in showing the unfolding of the mystery in the novel that they are trying to solve? And if so, what do you think of that approach? Kesua?
Um, Probably the wrong person to ask this question to because I love interiority in a novel. I think that what makes a novel different from a film. And so I think he does it brilliantly. You do spend a lot of time in the minds of the different characters. But I also think you spend a lot of time in the geographical spaces. He describes the island where the events are taking place really well, the sister island really well. So I'm going to give that a very short answer and say I don't think he spends necessarily as much time. I think that suggests he's always in people's heads, but I do think he does spend a lot of time. You get the interior lives of the characters very well, and not just the two kind of main characters, quite a number of the secondary characters. You understand their motivations and their thoughts and feelings of what's happening around them, and that's beautifully done. You get to know the characters, and that's how it's supposed to be.
If I could just
Eric?
pick up,
Oh,
oh,
go ahead, Tony. Yeah.
sorry, Roger, but yeah, I think he comes from several angles. There's the crime itself, which runs through as the main theme, but the characters, I like the way he gets into their heads and spends time on their stories. Keswa mentioned the geographic space, which why not? With islands of this tropical nature and beauty, writing a novel and bringing that out as well um, is a good thing. And also, I think he comes from he touches a bit of politics, the kind of politics that plays out on these small islands. So I think he comes from it from all the right angles.
Eric?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Kesua and Tony there. I I appreciated the way that we got into Digger's mind, and I love the scenes when Digger was in his house and in his kitchen, and the way he went about life, and the way he thought things through. But also, um, I love the picturesque descriptions of the island. It brought me there. I saw, I smelt, I felt uh, from every angle that Jacob Ross brought us into. So I think it was a fine balance.
What I liked too about the fact that we went into their heads is that we became, well, let me speak for myself. I became very attached to the characters. Um, so after I read Black Rain Falling, I wanted so much to learn about Digger and Miss Stanislaus that I went back and read the first novel, I read The Bone Readers. And I am really excited. I'm looking forward to reading the third one now.
Francine, anything to add there?
No, not really. I agree. I adored like getting to know all of them. Like I feel like, Digger's like my friend, and they're my buddies, and I want to know more about them. So I'm definitely also looking forward to the series continuing.
Yeah. I mean, I like that we mentioned the first in the series, the Bone Readers, and this one, because definitely there's a lot of backstory in the Bone Readers. But even in Black Rain Fallen itself, just to bring it back to, you get a sense of what Digger's life has been and the struggles that he had. Not to reveal too much, but he has a constant battle with what happened to his mother, and I'll just leave it as that. And I think that in itself inspires who he becomes as a detective, and how troubled he is by things that affect the different characters in the book. For example, Jana Ray. So I think does a beautiful job of giving the backstory and sort of giving us insight into why he's so attached to these cases. I see Eric wanted to jump back in earlier, but no, Eric.
I just wanted to mention, just to echo what Paula had just said, that after I read Black Rain Fall, I immediately jumped into the Bone Readers. So I needed to get that backstory, and really, it wasn't just because I wanted to get the backstory. Like Paula said, Digger, Digger becomes your friend. I mean, you want to know everything about the man. So um, I I think that's just the kind of character that Ross has created. I think he's created an indelible character. He's etched upon our minds and hearts.
I would like to ask a question, Roger,
Yep, go
if you
ahead,
don't
go
mind,
right
because
ahead.
as we are talking about the way Jacob Ross got us to like, um, Digger, and I suspect same thing with Miss Stanislaus. Is that a necessary ingredient when an author is attempting or going to write a series? Mustn't the author establish that sort of relationship with the main characters? I'm not a writer, so I'm throwing it out to you, to the literary minds on the panel.
Can I jump in as a reader rather than a writer and say, I think I think you're right to pick up that a series is perhaps different from a one-off novel. You don't have to like the main character in a one-off novel. You have to understand the story and enjoy the journey, but perhaps not the character. But I think you do have to have a sort of an affinity with a character in a series, because you're going to see them again and again in different situations. Now, I suppose that, and I'm as a reader, right? I'm not a writer either, but perhaps there's something in that frequent connection with the character that means that you have to either dislike them strongly or like them strongly, but you have to have a connection to them in some way, right? Because you're going to be following them in all these different situations with all these different people, and maybe they're characters that you love to hate. But I think Digger is deeply lovable. But part of the reason you love him is because you know that love is the one thing that's missing in his life, right? So there's that, he has that hole, and as kind of mere mortals, we kind of instinctively want to support him, and he does so much for so many people. He's clearly a caring character, but also a very strong character. He's a person with a very strong sense of themselves. I like to think of him as a real man of integrity, and he's also quite a rare character in that sense. He's willing to put his life on the line, his self on the line, his name. He's one of these people that his name means something. He's not attached to foolishness, and that is also, in a Black man in a contemporary novel, quite exciting. Right? We don't see that all the time. I think.
Interesting. He's different than Shaft, isn't he?
Yeah.
And about 30, 50 years younger.
But he is a complicated man.
And Digger is not. He's very uncompromising, and that's refreshing, I think.
I wanted to jump in on the question about likability. And because I noticed Kesawa said that perhaps it's more important in a series than in a single novel. Well, I just happened to have read a single novel, which I thought was brilliantly written, brilliantly researched, but because I didn't like the protagonist, I couldn't like the novel. And everything was right about the novel. The writing was very good. The research was brilliant. I couldn't fault it. And I wouldn't want to read another novel which centers on that character, because I disliked her. What the novel taught me is that I need to have an investment in the character. I need to feel invested in the character. Otherwise, I just don't care. So I don't know this, but that was the only time I've ever read a novel where the main protagonist, where I disliked the main protagonist.
But Paula,
Americana.
that's probably you, the way you live your life. If you don't like somebody, you probably just dismiss them. That's it.
That's
Cut and
probably
dry.
true. That's probably no. And I am a black and white person. I'm learning to see gray the older I get, but I think I tend to be a black and white.
You're binary.
Yeah, I'm all or nothing.
But because I think definitely by the end of Black Rain Fall, I definitely liked Digger, but I don't think in the beginning I wasn't persuaded either way, whether to like him or dislike him. And I think that was coming off of my reading of the Bone Readers. I think I was just like, oh, Digger, but then the way he was presented in Black Rain Fall, and I think Ross makes an effort. I think he makes an effort as a writer to make you like Digger.
But what I
more than
like,
anything
what he
else.
did, Raul J, as we're talking about Digger, I like how he juxtaposed Miss Stanislaus, right? With Digger. Without Miss Stanislaus, we wouldn't know a lot about Digger. You know, she was the one who kept revealing the Digger traits to you by her conversations with him, by the sort of conclusions that she drew about on his thinking. So I think Miss Stanislaus was used quite nicely in helping to develop her own character, obviously, which was something I think y'all will discuss, and but that of Digger as well.
Isn't it work both ways though? Because I think we also learn a lot about Miss Stanislaus through him and the way
Correct.
that he cares about her and thinks about her and understands his relationship with her.
Correct.
I think that their relationship, in fact, is almost, I don't want to say the driving force of the novel, but it almost actually is the driving force of the novel.
Well,
because
that
it's his
interplay was fantastically handled. You know, it was really done very well. I think that's one of the strong points of the novel.
But what about the juxtaposition? Excuse me. What about the juxtaposition between Digger and Malin?
Well, now, Paula, that's a character that I believe Paula dismissed because Malin is not on the likability scale registering any high marks, is he?
Well, I didn't like him, but he was important to the novel. He gave us the tension that we needed. If everybody was sweet like Digger or lovable like Miss Stanislaus, or you want to protect Miss Stanislaus, there would be no reason to read the novel. You need to have a problem. And it's interesting you all are calling him Malin, because in my head he's Malin, but Malin.
Yeah, for me it was Malan. For me,
Malan.
I was calling him Malan.
Malan. I think that's what I was calling him in my head too.
Yeah.
The audiobook calls him Marlon, so I wasn't sure if it was like a bad Jamaican accent. His name was actually Marlon. I really struggled with that one.
But it's spelled Malan.
Malan. Malan.
Yeah.
So so in French you would say Malin to mean, Francine, how would you translate Malin?
Oh, Malin, smart. Not really.
No,
not
like
smart.
like
Clever,
cunning or
clever,
bad.
cunning like a fox.
But like bad.
Yeah. Clever, but in a
So it's
bad
a little
way.
play on words, I guess. Question for the author, I guess.
Maybe because there's the French Creole thing happening there, so that's possible.
I went back and forth. I don't know how you would pronounce the name. Malin, Malan. That's the beauty of reading.
Yeah, to come back to Paula's point about you need Malan. I think there's enough tension without him, but I do think I like the character of Malan. He reminds me a little bit, the way that the author approaches it, Jacob Ross, reminds me actually a little bit of Leonie Ross in This One Sky Day, where I think when we interviewed her, she talked about no person is irredeemable, and that's why all of her characters have some redeemable trait. And Malan is similar in that on the surface he comes across as like just trouble. There's nothing positive that he adds, and he actually is devious and terrible and causes a lot of problems. But he also saves the day in a way that's unexpected. He doesn't take credit for and tries to hide that he's done it, really.
But also he saves the day. It was self-serving in one way. when
It is
yes.
self-serving,
Hmm.
but self-serving serves another purpose. But also, even prior to that moment, he's also ready to admit he's wrong. He's ready to kind of reconcile, and so he's not irredeemable. He remains, I think, relatively unlikable. But the author, I think, also uses his own kind of own personal prejudices to trap him, and then he has to recognize that his own kind of failings have caused his own downfall. And like, it's very complex. It's this is some
Well,
sophisticated
well,
storytelling, and I
yes,
love the novel for
yes,
that.
yes. It's complex. I mean, we're not giving away any spoilers, but there's only one place in the text where we get some real difficult backstory about Malan. And but it seems like that doesn't change how we view him. It should, but it seems like it doesn't. I would be I would be interested in how Ross develops that character in the subsequent novels, because I think he has a worthy story to tell. Just as much as Digger's story and Miss Stanislaus' story, but that's the thing. These three, they all came to this the position that they hold because they are troubled, and they're working through some really really deep issues. And I think Alan is the one who recognizes that the most, in my opinion.
Wasn't there
Right.
somebody
I
in
was.
the novel that actually, one of the characters that actually spoke about the broken nature of all of them, and that's why Chilman brought them together? If didn't they recognize that that is what Chilman was looking for? I
Uh,
can't remember who brought
That
that
was
up.
that was
yeah,
that
I
It
was
was
think
Marlon.
Malin.
it was Marlon who actually said it. Yeah, because I
Mhm.
was going to say that I agree with the fact that there has to be something about him that's irredeemable, and maybe we haven't gotten the full picture of that yet. But just the fact that he was one of the people that Chilman chose tells me that there's something there that, we're going to find out more about him. I guess that will probably be developed in the other novels. That,
Speaking of being developed in the other novels, for those of us who have read both novels, one of the things that I found fascinating, because I read Black Rain Falling first, was that when I went back and I read Bone Readers, I noticed that some really minor characters um, who appeared in in the first one had more important roles in the second one, and I was like, oh, this is how he started. So that was really great. And so one of the things I intend to read all five of the novels, because I want to see how Jacob Ross develops each character in each novel, and to see if any of the minor characters become more important as we go along.
I definitely want to see more from Spiderface and Pet, but I also want to see more from the man who brought it all together, right? Because his role is super interesting. I want to say DC, but it's not DC. It's okay. I can't remember not the commissioner.
the commissioner,
Childs.
no?
No. Childs. Child. Sorry, I
Chilman?
forget his name. Chillman.
Chilman?
Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
mhm.
I think
Chilman,
he's a
the old
character.
bull? The old bull?
Yeah, like what kind of a man does this, gets away with it, chooses this way, and doesn't Malan suggest that he also has his own demons, and that's why he recognizes it in them? And so I think that's another character that I'm going to really look forward to kind of peeling apart in later novels, I suspect.
Tony and I have some insider information, so we can tell you that you're going to get your wish about Pet.
But what I haven't heard anyone say is what they're expecting from Miss Stanislaus in the next novels, the next couple of novels.
I
I
think
think
the insider information, we're going to get exciting stuff about Miss Stanislaus as well.
Yep.
Oh,
Remember
I
to
think we have to see her
interesting.
5.
develop as a mother, right? That has to be part of her storyline going
Right,
forward.
because now in the first one, we didn't see the daughter very much. We knew she had a daughter. In the second one, in Black Rain Falling. We've started to learn a little bit about the daughter. Digger interacts with her, and the daughter plays a role in some of what happened. Not a big role, but she was involved, and she appeared more than once. So, yeah, possibly we will see that relationship, which also needs to be healed, I guess, developed as the series continues.
Yeah, I guess this wouldn't be a spoiler, but um, we we spent time in Digger's domain, but we never spent time in the Stanislaus's domain. You know, Ross always had her leaving Digger and going up the steps to her house. We never got into her house. So even though we've been talking about the interior mind, we haven't gone into her actual interior, which I think Ross does so well in developing in connection with the character Digger, especially, and also to an extent with Marlon, a little bit of Vic's exterior where he lives. Um,
And the commissioners as well. We see the commissioner's house. We see
mhm.
Dressy's house.
Yeah,
We even
and
see Elsie's
Dress's
house.
parents' house.
Mm.
I loved how he described that, because one of he describes it as an old colonial house, and I thought that was symbolic of the people themselves, that they are representative of the colonial power structure. Um, and that's where their politics are. They're conservative. I think I mean, with symbols it's touch or go, but I thought that their host, dresses, uh, Desi, I'm calling her, I'm speaking
You're
about her the
speaking like
way
Miss
Miss
Stanislaus.
Stanislaus.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Desi's
I absolutely love that. Not to interrupt, but I just love that quirk of hers. Go on, Paula.
but I know people like that, who just massacre every word.
Yeah. But
And
Paul, you touched a good point there, which Jacob Ross also does in this novel, where he shows you the whole social structure of the various characters, where they're placed, but the social structure of Camo itself, And I thought that was very contextual in the way the relationships intermingled, but he did that very well. I mean, I guess you realize by now, I absolutely like this novel, and I think it was very well written.
I like the natural progression we've taken in this conversation. And so at this time, we're going to take a reading from Jacob Ross himself to give you a bit more insight into Miss Stanislaus and her interactions with the different characters in the book.
Hello, my name is Jacob Ross. I am a writer from the Caribbean, although I live in England at the moment and have been living here for the past 3 decades or so. And I read from my crime novel, the one called Black Rain Falling. It's the second in a series of crime novels that I'm writing at the moment. And they're doing very well, in terms of international readership and stuff like that. You can check it out online if you want. I'll read a passage here from Black Rain Falling, where one of the main characters, who is a detective, her name is Miss Stanislaus, she goes off with her partner, Digger, to arrest a man. And this man has a personal history with Miss Stanislaus because as a child he abused her. He used to abuse her and she's never really gotten over it. But she's an armed officer now, and she goes to confront him because the community from which she comes is undergoing some serious problem with this man. He's become almost like a sort of drug dealer, and so it's her role as an officer to arrest him, but also she has to confront him for the way he treated her as a young person. So Digger, who is her friend, he's telling the story, and he goes along with her as backup. And this man is a massive man. He's a giant. He's a pretty terrible person, and he carries a hook with him. It's a gaff. Fishermen know what a gaff is. It's a massive hook that you use to hook fish with. Lift very big fish with. And he has one which he always carries with him. And it's a weapon. He doesn't use it as a tool to hang up fish with, but as to assault people. And it's night. It's dark. It's a moonlight night. It's always a moonlit night, and he is following them. And Digger saw him. Digger says, "I saw him, a giant upright shadow at the beginning of the bend in the road. Behind us, the long dust track to the airport. On our left, the wall of Manchineel and the sea. Our only chance of retreat was a tangle of grass and stones from which we just emerged. I felt my heart beat quicken. My mouth went dry. Jesus, I muttered. She planned this. With fast, heavy movements, the giant shape began bearing down on us. Miss Stanislaus pulled away, her voice rising to a shriek. Use your speed, Mr. Digger, use your speed. I heard the rapid padding of her feet as she retreated, and then I could no longer hear her. I spun on my heels, thrusting forward in a crouching zigzag dance away from Juba. I was about to hit my stride when something struck me between the shoulders. My head hollowed out and my legs gave way. I hit the road hard. When I rolled onto my back, Juba was standing over me. Catch you. His voice seemed to rumble out of a tunnel. He was holding the big steel hook in his right hand, the metal winking back the moonlight. I go and got you like a fish. A slow roll of the massive shoulders, a deep chested intake of breath, and the big man lunged at me. I threw myself sideways. The metal struck the road and sparked. I leapt to my feet, began backing away, my eyes on the half-raised weapon. My nostrils flared, and all I could hear in that moment was my boss, Chillman, warning me about not wearing my gun because it was going to kill me one day. Another belly rumble came from Juba. Let me see you dodge this one. He switched the weapon to his left hand, the curve of the big hook brushing his knee, his right arm spread wide. I shuffled backwards, dizzy with the stink of him, my instinct dropping my hand to my waist for the gun that wasn't there. Something hot and sudden flushed my head, and I felt the snarl rising from my guts. You smell like a pit latrine. Come on, kill me, I said. Crouched low, I followed the rise of the weapon and braced myself to leap sideways. On the peak of Juba's swing, the night crackled and splintered, and the big man straightened up, his arms still raised. From behind me came the quick, soft shuffle of footsteps, and there she was, Miss Stanislaus, barefoot and rigid in the moonlight, her gun leveled like the finger of God on the man. The second shot convulsed him. The third seemed to pin him there against the night. The steel hook left his hand and struck the road, its clatter flat and sharp. Miss Stanislaus's Ruger barked again, and the pause between each shot was terrible because Juba wouldn't fall.
Thank you for staying tuned with us. That was a reading from Black Rain Falling by Jacob Ross. So to jump off from the reading itself, I could throw it to the panel now. Is this a feminist novel? If yes, why? If no, why not? Kesua.
Wow, that's not really open it to the panel, but that's just asking me. Um, all right, do I think this is a feminist novel? I definitely think it has some really strong themes. String themes that kind of feminists think about, I guess. I would say that it had some very strong female characters, some very interested and curious characters. I think the misogyny of one of the characters in particular causes him all sorts of problems in the longer term, which we all see, him kind of embarrassed and humiliated, but also
which character was that?
Sorry. I don't want to spoil it. Like, I think there's a particularly misogynistic character who, because of his own misogyny, ends up like destroying everything, and then like also then kind of it creates a lot of problems for him, but also for the community and for the team. So in that respect, I think Ross takes quite a clear picture. He draws quite a clear picture on misogyny, but I also think he's got some interesting ideas about masculinity. When he's talking about the different ways that Kamaho men are and how they understood manhood, I think he kind of paints us a picture that suggests that he's very critical of current gender relations in contemporary Kamaho. And so Is it a feminist novel? I definitely think it has major feminist themes, or themes that feminists like. I like the treatment of women, I like the role of women, I like the importance of women in the novel. I don't know if I would call it a feminist novel though. Yeah, because I don't think he always gets like. There's some interesting things he does with women, right? Particularly, there's a scene where they go to visit the mother of one of the murdered people, and Digger says, Miss Stanislaus asks Digger, "What's the worst thing a woman can do to another woman in Camaho?" And Digger says, "Embarrass her." And Miss Stanislaus looks surprised. She says, "You know too much," right? So there's I think there's interesting things going on, right? But I don't know. I'm gonna reserve judgment. I'm gonna listen to what other people say and then maybe jump in afterwards. Like, I agree.
Yeah, I when I was reading the novel, I asked the same question in my head, and I don't have a conclusive answer to that. But Keshawa's response does at least help me to understand that I wouldn't call it a feminist novel, but definitely gender. Ooh, if it's not front and center, it's definitely near the front and definitely in the center of things because you have a team, young man, young woman. You have, I will call him a rather difficult chief of detectives in Malin, and you have an old cuss like Chillman with his ideas, and this the whole fabric of the accusation of murder with Miss Stanislaus. I think gender more or less more than feminism or masculinity is at the heart of this. Uh, so yeah, I would temper the question to that degree.
When I read the question, when I posed the question, I was only thinking mainly of Miss Stanislaus to be quite honest in the novel. I don't think I could really identify with any other characters, women characters in the novel who came across as well pet. There's definitely pet. So yeah, I am wrong in that. But I was thinking also of the commissioner's wife. She seemed what did anybody make of it? She seemed very I don't know, hidden
She's one I
away.
think whose character is going to be developed. I think like
Yeah,
there's stuff going on there, isn't there, that we can
there
take
is something
into.
going on there. 'Cause
Yeah.
I just found it very strange, the way she was presented in the novel.
But
Back to the panel.
also, what about the character of Sandra Fernandez? Right, her placement,
Ooh.
right, and her role, and her, her centrality to the way the story moves. Again, these choices that the author makes to put a woman in that space, to have her do the things that she does, because she's using her femininity. That's literally part of what she's doing, but she's also more than the character who we see most interact with her most believes her to be, right? And he's blinded by his own perception of what a woman can be or should be in relationship to him. And so, I think Eric's hit on my discomfort with the idea of it as a feminist novel, but I think we can definitely say gender is, as you say, front and center, and the way and the relationships with the different characters around gender. There's also that discussion between the men, between Digger and the young boy Jenna Ray, right? And these are two very young men talking. And what does 18-year-old boy having a relationship with a much older woman say? A woman is like an
He has swagger.
ecosystem.
He has the man has swagger. Look, I I think the whole drug culture comes out. I mean, let's face it, right? It's a crime novel centered on drug trafficking. That's what brings about all this this crime. And you mentioned the character of Sandra. Is her name the Venezuelan? Hmm? Right. The way Jacob Ross portrays her is almost identical to what the reality is on the ground in that drug scenario. I don't know if you all are getting me. I think what Digger does very well the smallness of the islands and the strength of the woman comes out very well, especially when he goes to Cara Island, which is even smaller than, and you see how those women take charge. Huh? You know, they are the law.
I know those Cara Island women because those are the
Yes.
women who raised me. I knew them intimately. Benna, oh, definitely Benna raised me. Those two women, those women.
Yeah, but Paula, that is what happens in reality. I can tell you that. You just have to go down to the Grenadines. You know, we told Jacob Ross when we were recording the reading that he wrote a book about us. This is where we live. This is where Paula and I live. This is where Francine used to live. It's in the heart of what goes on here. It's everyday living, you know. So yeah, is it a feminist novel? I don't know what a feminist novel looks like, Paul. I'm sorry, but it's certainly feminist friendly. It certainly is that. It certainly makes an attempt to show the strength of and the importance and the significance and the power of women. But I think it does it in the context of the cultural interplays on small islands, you know. So yeah.
Can I just add to that as well? The surprising, and I probably in vertical surprising thing that the author does when he has, rather than the male of the team be trigger happy, it's the woman. It's the woman who loves her gun, he has a nickname for it, and who will use it first. Digger's not a trigger happy cop. He's very atypical in that way. He doesn't like shooting. He's never killed anyone when we meet him, and he doesn't intend to ever use his gun. People are telling him constantly to use his gun, whereas Miss Stanislaus, her and her gun, they friends. They real friends. Yeah.
But what he does there as well, if I may jump in again, Roger, is that he shows Miss Stanislaus as a person who you like. She is a gentlewoman, but don't mess with her. She'll cut you down, you know, and that's that's a trigger happiness I believe you're talking about.
Right.
I don't look at it as trigger happiness. I just look at it as don't cross the line with me.
Yeah.
You know?
She is also quick to shoot, though. We see that.
But then Miss Stanislaus is portrayed. I don't think it's the right word, but she comes across as being very erratic. You know, sort of quick to jump into things, quick to danger, etc. Even when she assimilates into the Fire Baptist or Spiritual Baptist community, she seems more spontaneous. There we go. Much more spontaneous than Digger.
That's the first one, Roger.
Yeah,
I think
you're
what
going into
it is.
bone readers there.
Oh. Yeah, that was bone readers. But I think what it is with Miss Stanislaus is that we see it as her being spontaneous and jumping in like willy-nilly. But the thing is, she is so brilliant. She is like 10 steps ahead of everybody. So she knows what she's doing. She's not being spontaneous. She has thought it through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read her as very measured as well as a character. Like she's and I think I'd agree with Francine.
Yeah, for
thinking always.
We don't know where she is. So when we see her taking an action, we think she's being spontaneous, but she has already figured. She's steps ahead of the rest of us, and so she's doing her thing.
Raul J may have been thinking about the interaction with Juba, which is driven by the fact that Juba gave her these demons that she has to live with, and for all her brilliance, she is not really thinking it through when in her interactions with Juba. That is driven by the demons that he left her with. So I don't know if that's what Raul J was thinking of.
Also controversial that we could add in here as well is why she seems to be portrayed as slightly naive, and so I don't know if why do you think Ross portrayed her like that? Especially the way she changes everybody's names and says she comes across as being.
That's not naivety. I know people like that.
I'm being kind of. I'm being nice here.
Right.
She comes across as being
ditzy.
No, not at all. She's not well educated. She's not well educated. So remember her father comments on that. Chilman mentions the fact that because he abandoned her when she was a child, she did not get the kind of education that the children of his marriage got. So I think that is probably the fact that she massacres words. That is just a byproduct of the fact that she is not, well, she doesn't have good formal education, or a lot of formal education. But I know people who speak like her, so I find it surprising that surprises you. I know so many people who speak exactly like that. She was very real to me, and these people are very competent, very brilliant in the spheres, in their spheres of how they live their lives. I think it's an education thing. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, and that's what makes the book and Miss Stanislaus to me so charming. Even though it's a crime novel, we're dealing with some heavy stuff here, but it's charming because, as Paula said, these are people that we know. This is my mother. Shoot, my mother massacres words all the time. So yeah, she's real. She's real to people who grew up in a Caribbean setting. I mean, what should we expect otherwise? I mean, Digger seems to speak a little bit of the Queen's English because he did do well in school. He didn't go to university, but he also spent time in England, so he can go back and forth in terms of his language, and he understands Miss Stanislaus. He doesn't correct her. He doesn't correct her. He knows who she's talking about. That's the same thing we would do with other people.
Digger also goes out with what we call a hoity-toity woman, And you remember that scene when he was having dinner with the parents. I thought that was a classic one as well.
But that is something we've also seen.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
As Caribbean people, we've all seen that kind of interplay.
Yeah, I love the quote about the boat. Oh my goodness! I lifted up my hands.
Remind me of what that was, Eric, because I don't remember it.
He directed it toward
the wife,
mother, but I thought it was really directed toward Raymond, the father. But Digger is he's upset. This man is measuring him, and this man is basically saying that he ain't good enough for my daughter. And Digger said, "Hey, look now, we all came off the same boat.
Came off the same boat.
You didn't have to reflect on that.
Yes, we came from the same, and we didn't come across on first class tickets. Yes, yes, I remember that.
I love that. Can I ask you a question? Actually, I thought one of the things I loved about the book was how it dealt with colorism in the novel. Did you guys pick up on that? I thought it was very, very clever. I know that some people might have been uncomfortable with the descriptions, but what did you all think?
I thought it was spot on. I even the unfavorable description of Decima's husband, which actually sounded like my cousins, and in fact,
you're talking about Luther King.
Yes. He uses a very. It's not a favorable description. A Caucasoid Negro. That's what he called him. And it did sound, from the description, it did sound like some of my cousins, but I didn't take it personally.
It was accurate. Again, these are people that we know. You grow up in,
but I think Ross really
people.
is colorful in the way he writes. Just to reflect on that description that Paula just gave of Luther King. I thought that was so funny.
There's also the bit, I think, where he says they doesn't have to be white to be wealthy. He didn't have to be wealthy to be white. What does he say? But he kind of makes the point about Luther King's corruption. He suggests that no one would have expected, because he was already so light-skinned, that he didn't have money, and that enabled his corruption because everyone expected him to be rich anyway. So when no one asked, but how does he make money doing that? I thought that was really clever as well.
Yeah, but Keswa, that is actually what Ross touched on there, is actually a reality. well, I could speak to St. Vincent, and I'm sure it is across the Caribbean. People assume that you have a right to money if you are a particular shade of complexion. They're not going to question whether you are dishonest, whether you're corrupt, not off the bat anyway. However, if people of a darker shade of complexion don't seem to be doing anything meaningful, but yet being enriched, you're going to jump straight to the conclusion.
I
that
remember Sherry,
yeah.
but Sherry Jones discussed that when we spoke with her, when she was speaking about the red leg character. So this is just a natural. It happens because of our colonial past. It's a post-slave, post-colonial society is going to be like that. Race and shade and money are all tied up, and the more you look like our colonizers, the more people expect you are going to have money, or as Tony describes it, have the right to have money.
Right.
You know.
Now, do y'all think because this book is went out widely, y'all think people who aren't from the region or tied to the region would this jump off the page for them?
Well, Ross says it's doing very well. When we spoke to him, and then viewers will have a chance a couple of weeks from now when we interview him. But he mentioned that the book was doing fairly well outside of the region. He called a few countries, Paula.
Yes, and it's been translated into several languages.
But
I don't think I don't think it matters whether the readers outside the region appreciate the things that we appreciate. We're going to read it from our lens as Caribbean people or African diaspora people. People who are not from our background will read it from different lens, but it doesn't matter. There's something. When we read Leonie Ross deliberately put things in there for us that she didn't expect the wider community to understand. And that's fine. That's fine. They will get the broader themes. We will get it. We will understand it more intimately because it's written from our perspective, and the novel is touching on our reality. So I don't think it matters that people from outside our communities wouldn't get these things.
No, I love that it drips from the Caribbean. I feel like every simile, every metaphor, every reference, it felt like. Because at one point he says he describes something really random, like happy like a new shiny dumpling or something. Like every single time he was making a comment or a literary reference, it was about the Caribbean. It was so deep. I
like the phrase "haul your ass" because I don't hear that anywhere else other than in the Caribbean.
Tony, this is a family program.
That is so Grenadian. Like, I mean, like all of those expressions. I was like back home. I was like, yeah, I know these people. These are my cousins. These are the people I grew up with. These are the people that I hear when I'm walking down the street in Grenada, talking to each other, cussing each other out, but cussing each other out in a fun way, because a lot of the times when they were cussing each other out, they ended up laughing. It's just great.
I've never been to Grenada or St. Vincent, but I also heard like the vibration was the Caribbean. Like it just felt. I think Eric, you described it beautifully. You said it just vibrated for me, like Caribbean-ness in all of its like everything.
Kessawa, the Grenadines. If we could just spend 2 minutes on the Grenadines zoology, hemmed in between Grenada and St. Vincent. Okay, so that is really what connects us. In fact, Petit Martinique, which I believe comes into the novel as well as a different name, is also owned jointly by Grenada and St. Vincent, believe it or not. There is piece of Petit Martinique that belongs to St. Vincent and piece of Petit Martinique that the majority of it belongs to Grenada. It just shows you. Now, you see that Caribbeanness you're talking about, it is even more an interesting study. The people in the Grenadines, there are few of them living on a small rock, and they have their own unique traits, which Ross brings out very well in the novel. very, very well. They're resilient people, eh? They don't or didn't have much connection to the main economy before tourism. Okay, so what did they do to survive? Yes, they fished, but
Smuggling.
that is, and that's where that's the new regime now. It's no longer the alcohol smuggling, it's no longer the contraband, but it's the drugs that are moving from South Colombia, Venezuela, going north. So the Grenadines and Grenadines, it's very vital in that chain. You know, Ross really does a lot in between those pages. How many pages were there?
Like 418,
400,
I think,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, he does a lot, and the novel was not busy, which is what I liked. You know, it was not didn't get that sense of busyness.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the pacing was excellent.
I love where we're going. So Tony, do you want to give a rating coming off of your last statements there?
Well, I guess you're coming to the end then, Roll.
Yes, we are.
Well, if I'm rating out of 5, this is a 4.75 for me. I don't know why I am not giving him the extra 0.25, but just saving space for maybe I don't know. He himself thinks he can improve. So let me give him the 0.25 less of 5, 4.75.
Eric?
Yeah, I rate this a strong 4.5. Again, I want to give him room to improve since we got what, three more novels coming. I don't want to go 5 and then I gotta go back. I want to keep going. So yeah, 4 out of 5.
Kesua?
I'm now really stuck. I was like, this is an easy 5, you guys. You're being stingy. But now I'm like, oh, maybe I should be like 4.9. Because I had I had like one small flaw, but I think like nothing's ever really perfect. So it's like a 4.9. It's a 5, man. This is a wonderful piece of literature that everyone should read. 5.
Francine?
Oh gosh, Castaway, you're right. It's a 5. I was going with 4.5, and then I thought about Bone Readers plus Black Rain falling together, and that's a 5, man. With more to come. Yeah.
Paula?
Well, you know, I'm the mean girl, so it's 4. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's 4, because Bone Readers is a 5. And there's no way, I mean, this is a good novel. This is a very good novel. But Bone Readers is a brilliant novel. So if Bone Readers is a 5, this has to be a 4.
Yeah. Bone Readers for me is also a 5.
Yeah, I think
Now,
when
that
you
is
put them
interesting.
together, what we have so far, Bone Readers and Black Rain Fall, I think 5, but I'll give Black Rain Fall in 4.5. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's the end of our show for today. We thank you for staying tuned and for watching Page Turners Plus. The next time you hear and see us, we will be doing an interview with the author of this book, Jacob Ross. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.